What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Paramount Plus crime drama mystery television series, Dexter: Original Sin, and whether or not the show was canceled too soon. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, so if for some reason you haven't got around to watching this show yet, and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. Dexter: Original Sin is an American-made crime drama mystery television series created by Clyde Phillips. Following on from Dexter: New Blood, the series' frame story sees serial killer of killers Dexter Morgan thinking back on his youth, which takes place 15 years before the first season of Dexter, while on his deathbed. The series stars Patrick Gibson, Christian Slater, Molly Brown, Christina Milian, James Martinez, Alec Shimizu, Reno Wilson, Patrick Dempsey, and Michael C. Hall as the inner voice of Dexter. Now, the series premiered on December 13th of 2024 on Paramount Plus with Showtime. And at the time of the making of this video, the series has a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, with its popcorn meter currently sitting at 78%. The series has a Metascore of 50 on Metacritic based on just 6 critic reviews, with a user score of 7.3 based on 137 user ratings. And finally, the series has an 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb with just over 47,000 ratings. Now, Showtime had announced a second season renewal for Dexter: Original Sin back in April, and that was just 6 weeks after the prequel series following a young Dexter Morgan ended its 10-episode first season. And sources say that the show had been on hiatus since production wrapped, and that no official start date for production on the second season was ever really scheduled. Now, they also say that with a change of leadership at Paramount following the Skydance merger, the Dexter franchise moved from Showtime/MTV Entertainment into the reborn Paramount Television Studios under Matt Thunell. The decision then came to focus on Dexter Resurrection, which continues the present-day Dexter story from the original series and the follow-up, Dexter: New Blood. A writer's room for a potential second season of Dexter Resurrection is apparently set to open soon, with the intent being a renewal, sources tell The Hollywood Reporter, though Season 2 has not yet been formally greenlit. The series has been performing well for Paramount Plus Premium and the linear Showtime channel, with a premiere episode that drew 3.1 million viewers over its opening weekend and grew to 4.4 million after 7 days. And that's what Paramount is saying, and they said this as of August 15th. And as of August 15th, the episode drew the show's largest audience of the season. Well, that means that the viewership has gone down from the first episode. Now, sources also note that Paramount remains invested in the Dexter franchise, but it's directing its efforts towards the unfolding story of Dexter Resurrection rather than filling in more of the character's life in a continued prequel series. Now, I've always said that prequels can be a really tricky thing because, right from the start, you're attempting to tell a story in anachronistic order. And that can prove itself difficult in and of itself, right? You add to that an 11-year gap in the story, as exists in this particular case, and you're asking for narrative trouble, in my opinion. And this is because you have to keep continuity in order to satisfy the real fans of the original series, especially now that old shows can easily be accessed through cable on demand and streaming services. Now that people can just go back and watch, for example, the OG Dexter series, and then go right into watching whatever other series that might be Dexter related, you really, really, really have to do a better job than you would have if this was a situation where, you could only watch this on Showtime or something like that, and on-demand channels didn't exist or streamers didn't exist. And you also have to contend with the mythology of sometimes iconic characters, which can be equally as difficult. And here, the show creates a plethora of issues, especially given the fact that the original show made use of flashback to a younger Dexter figuring out how to become a notorious serial killer. And we see him as in the present storyline in the first show, something that now Original Sin is attempted to do all over again, adding much more context as it went. And I honestly think this had a negative impact on how we saw heavily featured characters that appeared in the original show. For example, the more we saw of Harry and Deborah, in my opinion, it changed how I viewed them at least. Harry and his wife had a son, and that son died because Harry wasn't paying attention to him. So I'm starting to think, okay, Harry's a bad parent. We also saw the depth of his disinterest in properly parenting Deborah after his wife passed. And finally, we saw just how both instrumental and detached he was as it pertained to Dexter's ascension to becoming the most prolific serial killer in history. Again, more bad parenting. And the cherry on top, we saw a much more contextualized version of Harry's affair with Laura, Dexter's mom. And though we knew a lot of this from watching the original series, they were in short spurts here and there. And, in this particular show, seeing Harry's actions play out in longer spurts fundamentally changed, again, how I felt about Harry as a husband, as a parent, and even as a cop. Harry did a lot of things, even as a police officer, where you were like, okay, that's a no-no. Screwing your CI, that's a no-no. And when you see how that all played out in much longer context, you're like, ooh, yeah, it looks real bad, And again, like I said, how Harry kind of played Deb to the left, after his wife dies, you like, do you care about your daughter at all? And I get it, he had Dexter to worry about, but like, come on, bro, like you got to do better. And that brings me to Deb. Now, if we are to accept this show's interpretation of her character, Deb was an absolute shit show as a teenager, right? She was doing hard drugs, cocaine, and this, not like some weed here or there, cocaine, hard drugs. And she was dating a whole grown-ass man, a man that Harry knew about and did nothing to stop. See, again, like I said, it would be different if Deb was, dating Gio behind her dad's back and he didn't know what the hell was going on. But when he finally realized what was going on, it was like, whatevs. You know what I'm saying? And that changed how I viewed Deb's moral compass as a cop in the original series, because we were sold that Deb just believes in doing the right thing no matter what, right? And it was really easy for you to think that she was always like that, but she wasn't. You see what I'm saying? And Deb got into a lot of shit that would have probably stopped her from being a cop in the first place, right? And again, minus her, deciding to protect Dexter after finding out he was a killer in the original show, that was really the only thing that we ever saw where we were like, ooh, okay, that don't, feel like a thing that Deb would do, but now maybe I guess it does, right? And in fact, Deborah giving Dexter all those speeches about responsibility, they ring extremely false now that we've seen all the nonsense that Deb got up to as a teenager, right? And though I know in Original Sin, she is in fact just a teenager. But again, this isn't typical teenage shit she's doing, right? This is grown person get charged as an adult type stuff. The kind of stuff, again, that would make it where you wouldn't be able to be a cop in the first place. You know what I'm saying? And it made me look at Deb completely differently. And when you look at that crazy subplot in the original series where Deb was going to therapy and the therapist convinced her that she was in love with Dexter, it's like, yeah, you don't see any of that here. None. Like I said, when you watch Dexter and Deb interact, you don't get the slightest inkling that, the whole time she really had a crush on him. Like, nah. And, I know some of you will claim that we already knew that Harry was a bad father to Deborah because she says so on many occasions in the original series, and that it probably was because he had his hands full with Dexter. I get it. But in the new show, Harry is super flippant about Dexter's extracurricular activities. In fact, Harry's ghost did more to help Dexter in the original series than he does in real life in this series, which is kind of my point. And then you throw on top of that the fact that in the original series, Harry was a uniformed cop, not a detective, when he found Dexter in a shipping container. And I'm just saying, right? And these are different things that the original Sin show got wrong. And you're starting to jumble up the past timeline. You're just making things more complex and complicated. And look, last but not least, it takes a lot of things going right to make a TV show into a hit, including casting decisions. And if I'm being honest, and this may just be selfish on my part, you guys know if you subscribe to me here, I'm a pretty particular dude. But despite the cast of Dexter Original Sin all doing commendable work on the series, it is my opinion that Dexter Morgan is Michael C. Hall or nobody. That James Remar is Harry Morgan or nobody. That Jennifer Carpenter is Deborah Morgan or nobody. These have become iconic roles, right? And so just shoving somebody else into the role and going, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie, it's the same thing. No, it's not. You get what I mean? And look, and that's how it goes with shows that reach a certain status. A status I believe Dexter, the original series, managed to reach. And the proof is in the fact that they've now made 4 shows in the franchise over the last 20 years. And you don't do a thing like that if you don't have a show that you believe that people care about, truly. I mean, I want you guys to think about Game of Thrones if it came back and Kit Harington was not playing Jon Snow. Like, people would revolt. Or Emily Clark wasn't Daenerys. I mean, I know Daenerys is dead, but like, let's say that, she, somehow was be able to be brought back by the Lord of Light or something like that, but Emily Clark wasn't playing Daenerys. You'd be like, what? Or Maisie Williams wasn't playing Arya. Like, you just kind of go, nah. Or Peter Dinklage wasn't playing Tyrion. You'd be like, what the hell is going on here? And, because those people have become synonymous with the roles that they played. It's just like when they tried to bring back The Matrix and Larry Fishburne was not Morpheus. It's like, man, get out of here with that. And, it's for all these reasons that, though I understand that narratively speaking, this show could have run for several years, stopping just before the start of the OG series, if that's what Paramount had ultimately decided to do. But I have to say, I'm glad this show is getting the axe, despite how many people were watching it. And I'm glad of that before it has a chance to further ruin Harry and Deb, and maybe even Dexter as well. But Harry and Deb specifically, who are both dead in the present, and therefore can no longer do anything to make up for the sins of the past. I mean, Deb's dead, so it's not like she can go out here and do something that makes us feel better about what we saw her do in Original Sin, and neither can Harry, because they're both ghosts at this point. Well, I mean, Harry's the only ghost that shows up in Resurrection. But my point being is that neither of these characters can do anything in real life, to kind of, help us to gloss over what we watched them do in Original Sin. Now look, don't get me wrong. I thought the show for the most part was fairly well executed all around. And if it had been a standalone show, I would have been happy to advocate for its continuance. But it isn't a standalone show. And when you conceive its existence at the same time as Dexter Resurrection, I thought it was just too much Dexter right now. You can't have a show living in the past and living in the present running on TV at the same time. Like it's crazy. It's crazy to even ask your audience to try to, rationalize that. I mean, as they're watching it, what? Like, it's too much Dexter. And I think I had mentioned before here on the channel that I thought it needed to be one or the other. Either you focus on the present with Dexter Resurrection, or you cling to the past with Original Sin. But I thought Paramount trying to do both, especially simultaneously, was a recipe for narrative disaster. But what do you guys think? Have you had a chance to check out Dexter Original Sin yet? If you have, what did you think of the show and how it readdressed old business? What did you think about the show's cancellation? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. You can also now support the channel by leaving a super thanks. If you should be so inclined, I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, feel free to subscribe to my new Shorts channel for additional content. The link is in the description. In addition, be sure to go and check out themaskscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all on the next video.